What do we know about David? We know that he was a shepherd. He was the last-born of his family. Samuel comes and says, no, David, one day you're going to be king. And David fights the giant, kills the giant. Saul promises to give David his daughter, and so he marries Michal. And then Saul gets jealous, and David is kind of exiled. He's on the run. He soon grabs some 600 men, and they help him fight in his very first skirmish to protect the town of Keilah from the Philistines. And so we pick up there in 1 Samuel 25 and verse 1. It says, "Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at the house at Ramah." That is a footnote. That's a footnote. And so the story is going to continue going. It's going to continue on and talk to you about David. But, Samuel died. And there's no other mention of this. But this is a very important thing because Samuel's the prophet. He's the advisor to the king. Every king needs someone to speak into them, someone to tell them, these are the facts. You don't want to surround yourself by a bunch of yes men that say, oh yeah, no, what you're doing is great. So Saul's lost his kind of little touch to having God speak to him. His prophet's dead. We said last week that David now has the ephod. So the Bible is kind of telling you God is siding with David. God is leaving Saul. Continuing in verse 1, it says, "Then David rose and went down to the wilderness of Paran, and there was a man at Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of this man was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved." Like every married couple. No, I'm just joking. Just mine. No, I'm just kidding. He was a Calebite. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, so David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel, go to Nabal, greet him in my name, and thus you shall greet him. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house. Peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers. Now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm. They missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we have come on feast day. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son David." So what's going on? So Nabal's rich, okay? He has land, he has animals, he has sheep, he has property. And so as the wealthy man who has the shepherds, he kind of lives in fear that maybe some of that could be taken away from him. So the Philistines are sending out raiding parties all the time. David's men are the army. They protect. So they're up on the hillside, making kind of like a wall between the enemy lines and these kind shepherds. And so typically, this is now the shearing season, so now this is time for your prophets. So your prophets, as the wealthy men, are going to start coming in. So during this generous time of giving, you tip, right? You give a little something extra to the army that's up on the hill that they've been watching over your sheep. And so you kind of spread the wealth and spread the love around a little bit. And so David realizes that it's Christmas bonus time. So he sends his men on down and says, whatever Nabal will give you, let him give you. And so there's probably going to be an issue here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the Bible for us to read. Verse 9, "When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited." So Nabal, like I said, wealthy man, but he's probably also just a little bit shrewd. And so we'll see that in a second in verse 10. "And Nabal answered David's servants, 'Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed from my shearers and give it to men who come from I don't even know where?' So Nabal says, 'I don't know David. I don't know Jesse. I don't owe this guy anything.'" Now, interestingly enough, in Hebrew, Nabal, his name, it means wicked. It also means fool. In fact, when David writes Psalm 14, the fool says in his heart there is no God. The word fool is this man's name. So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all of this. And David said to his men, "Every man strap on a sword." And every man strapped on a sword, and David also strapped on a sword. And about 400 men went after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. So here's David again, and he's kind of falling away from this path that he's on to being the hero, to being the king. He's kind of falling a little bit back onto the outlaw side, and he's telling all of his men to grab a sword, and they're all heading out to Nabal's ranch, probably up to no good. Verse 14, but one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife. He said, behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet your master, and he rallied at them. Yet these men were very good to us, and we have suffered no harm, and we did not miss anything while we were in the fields, as long as we went with them. They were a wall to us, both night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping their sheep. Now therefore know this, and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house, and he is such a worthless man that one cannot speak to him. So one of Nabal's own shepherds turns him in, narks on him, goes to the wife and says, your husband's running off with a full head of steam. There's no stopping him. He's throwing his hands up in defense. He's picked up his defenses, and here comes David in for the attack. And hopefully, Abigail can fix this mess. Verse 18, then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 skins of wine and 5 sheep already prepared, 5 seahs of parched grain and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. And she said to her young men, go on before me, behold, I will come after you. But she did not tell her husband. Now, this is my kind of gal. She fixes the problem with food, right? What's the Bible say? She makes 200 loaves of bread. She has 2 jugs of wine. She prepared and killed 5 sheep. She throws in some side dishes, some macaroni and cheese or potato salad. And she throws it all on a donkey, and she sends it on ahead of her. Abigail could not be any more different than her husband, right? Abigail is thinking on her feet. She's quick to make a decision here. And when they say that opposites attract in a marriage, they're literally talking about Abigail and Nabal. Her appearance in the Bible is said to have wisdom. She's a woman of beauty. She's a woman of intelligence. And you think about, here's David, right, coming after them. Here's David, who has been learning what it means to be on the run, who learned not to take revenge against Saul, who the Bible says is a man after God's own heart, who the Bible says will one day be king. Here he is, seeing red, driven by rage, coming in with a sword, clearly not on the path that he's supposed to be on. And here comes Abigail, who the Bible says is a woman of wisdom, is a godly woman, and she will be a woman of influence and a woman who brings joy. Abigail is going to remind David that he's not an outlaw. Abigail's name in Hebrew means joy, specifically the one who brings joy to her father. She's going to remind David about the path that he's supposed to be on, the path of a hero, not the path of an outlaw, the path that leads to him being the king that the people need. And so here's our point. The Lord is going to use people of godly wisdom, people who will speak wise counsel into our lives, and it will help us work towards God's kingdom and God's purpose. And we're going to see that in Abigail. The first thing we see is God uses our talents and our gifts. God certainly used Abigail's. Abigail is clearly a Proverbs 31 gal. It says she rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. So the situation, you have 400 people coming towards you, that would demand a quick decision. You have 400 men coming towards you with swords, that's one thing. You have 400 hungry men coming towards you with swords, that's another. And so she is quick on her feet. She makes a decision. She doesn't hesitate. She moves forward with a sense of purpose, and she has faith that God will use her talents and her gifts. And what do we see next from her? In verse 23. It says, when Abigail saw David, she hurried and got down from her donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Oh, me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant." How does Abigail approach David? Does she just walk up to him and just kick down the door and say, "Hey, who are you? This is my house. What are you doing in my house? What is this?" No, she doesn't do that. She comes to him in humility. She comes to him like a servant. God will move through our spirit of service. He will move through our spirit of service. What Abigail does in this instant is she shows David respect, right? It was customary back then that if a visitor came into your house, that you would show them respect, that you would show them honor and kindness. Pastoral trainer John Maxwell says, servanthood is not difficult to define, it is only difficult to achieve. Abigail literally falls on her face in total surrender. And over 10 times in this little back and forth between the two of them, Abigail always calls David Lord, and she always refers to herself as the maidservant, which she is anything but. She is the lady of the house, all right? And when people will tell you that a leader is a powerful person, or a leader is a person with influence and stature and good looks, how do we see our Savior model leadership? How do we see Jesus model leadership? Jesus says in Matthew 20, even as the Son of Man came, not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Billy Graham says, unless our belief in God causes us to serve, then our faith stands condemned. Not you stand condemned, your faith stands condemned, because our faith is built on service. It's the whole story of the Bible from the top cover to the bottom cover. What do we see time and time again? Kings get brought down. Shepherds get brought up, right? The firstborn son doesn't receive anything. It's the lastborn son that gets the blessing. We see 99 sheep who are absolutely perfectly fine, and the teacher does what? Leaves and goes and finds the one who is lost. Our own teacher, our own shepherd, does what? He takes off his robes of authority and says, This shows you that I'm a teacher, but I take all that off, and I put on a towel of service, and he washed his disciples' feet. It's the whole story of the Bible. When we talk about being a Christian, the word Christian means little Christ. You can never be more like Christ unless you are serving. Verse 25, she goes on, let not my Lord regard this worthless fellow, she's talking about her husband, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young men of my Lord, whom you sent. Now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt, and from saving with your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now let this present that your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant. Listen to her words. Abigail comes with complete honesty, doesn't she? She lays it all out on the table. She even says that her husband's a fool, and then she makes a joke about it, and she says, well, what do you expect? His name means fool, right? God honors our personal integrity. God honors our personal integrity. David is coming in with his men. He's coming in. He's steaming hot. Why would he trust her? He doesn't know her at all, so why would he trust her? Because she comes and she displays this honesty, this integrity, this loyalty. And the ability to lead someone, the ability to influence someone, it's not going to happen because you have a business card. If your business card says president, your business card says CEO, that doesn't mean people will just naturally want to follow you. People will follow you because of your credibility. They'll follow you because of who you are, what comes from your heart, your true character. Proverbs 10:9 says, whoever walks in integrity walks securely. Being a person of integrity means that you're a person that what you say is what you do. That when someone talks to you, that you're going to keep their confidence and you're not going to go talk to somebody else. But when you come with honesty, when you come in humility, then those people understand that you're a real person like me. When there's trouble in somebody's life, that is going to allow them to feel comfortable to come and talk to you. So what does David say to Abigail in response? What is his reply back? Verse 32. David said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you who have kept me this day from blood guilt and from working salvation with my own hand. Notice what David doesn't say. He doesn't say, wow, you're a woman of honesty, you're a woman of integrity, I love that about you. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, wow, you come to me in like a servant, humble-like nature. That was great. He doesn't say that either. He doesn't say, wow, you really know how to bake a loaf of bread. Like, God really uses your spiritual gifts. Doesn't say that either. So everything we just got through saying that would be a good quality for you to be influential in somebody else's life, David doesn't even notice. So obviously all of that stuff is wasted, right? No. What does David say? He says, "Blessed be God who sent you to me," right? God convicts through faith. God convicts through faith. Abigail's not trying to show off her skill. She's not trying to show off her own talent. She's not trying to bring any praise or glory to herself. She's exhibiting her faith. And if you read verses 26 through 34 really closely, you see this discourse between the two of them. Time and time again, they're always, both of them, Abigail and David, they're mentioning God, mentioning how they want to bring God glory, how they want to be kept from doing the wrong thing. Listen, our world desperately needs people of faith. Our world desperately needs people of faith who can influence. And when you have a person on the other side of you in church and they've lost their job or they're going through a divorce, who are they going to come talk to that could be godly influenced in their life? Who are they going to reach out to? If you have someone in our congregation who's going through depression or someone who's thought about committing suicide, who are those people going to go and talk to? They need people who can influence and people who are strong in faith. So what is David's response? Is he convicted by Abigail? What does he say? Verse 35. Then David received from her hand what she had brought, and he said to her, "Go up in peace to your house. See, I have obeyed your voice and I have granted your petition." David's back on track. He's back on the path to being a hero again. David is showing that he's teachable. He's convicted by her approach, and now our story can kind of move on to a more happier ending. Abigail is able to save her husband, right? Spared all the shepherds. No one's going to die. And so Abigail probably feels, pretty good about herself. She wants to go home and take her shoes off and tell her husband, everything's fine. Tell the shepherds everything's fine. She comes back, and Nabal's drunk. He's passed out on the couch, and he's just wasted away. And she's just like, oh, and she can't share with him what she did, so she figures, well, I'll tell him in the morning when he wakes up. And, rolls around 3 o'clock in the morning, p.m., and he finally wakes up, and she tells him exactly what she did for him, how she helped him. And what does the Bible say that is his response? He has a heart attack and dies. That's awesome. That's what happens. He has a heart attack and dies. So I love the Bible. No, that's funny. So in verse 39, it says, "When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, 'Blessed be the Lord, who has avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal, and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord has returned the evil of Nabal on his own head.' Then David sent and spoke to Abigail to take her as his wife. When the servants of David came to Abigail at Carmel, they said to her, 'David has sent us to you to take you to him as his wife.' And she rose and bowed with her face to the ground and said, 'Behold, your handmaid is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord.' And Abigail hurried and rose and mounted a donkey, and her 5 young women attended her. She followed the messengers of David and became his wife." So, to finish the chapter and to keep going with it, we have to kind of change subjects because the chapter is changing subject. The chapter was talking about Abigail being somebody who could influence someone with her life, with her faith, with her gifts, and she was able to sway David. Now, the two of them are getting married, so we kind of have to talk about that. We kind of have to talk about love. Is that all right? Can we talk about love just for a second? Can we talk about, I don't know, they're going to get married, I guess, so we got to kind of talk, can we talk about marriage? I don't know, is that relevant at all in the world? I don't watch the news. So I was going to say we could dim the lights, but we've already done that. Could light a candle. David marries Abigail. David marries Abigail. Why? Well, she's a widow, obviously. He's in the neighborhood. He's kind of powerful. He's got an army, and so that means he has resources. He has, things available to him. Probably feels guilty, like this kind of thing all brought about because of him. Now she's kind of left, and so as a Hebrew man, he probably feels responsible to be her kinsman redeemer, to go in, sweep her off her feet, marry her, and make sure that she's got, everything covered. Does that sound romantic? He's obligated to her and feels guilty, and so, all right, I'll marry you. That's probably not romantic, right? It's probably not what's going on. We don't know. I mean, it doesn't say, there's no verse in the Bible that says, and then David looked at Abigail and thought, she's hot. That's not there, right? The Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say, and then David saw Abigail and he fell in love, right? It doesn't say that either. So you kind of have to kind of read between the lines and look at what's here. But I think the story of Abigail and David and their first meeting kind of has some clues in it about what love can be built on. And I think the first one would definitely be admiration. You know, there is definite admiration for the two of them. Looking, what does Abigail do the first time she sees David? She bows down at his feet as a sign of admiration, as a sign of respect. And you know, if you don't treat somebody with respect, if you don't treat somebody with admiration, I don't know how you could say that you love them. You know, when I first met Joanna and I fell in love with her, I had dated other people before. She's up in the booth. I was going to say I dated a lot of other people before, but we'll just say I dated other people before. I had gone on a couple of dates, like 2 maybe, but okay, more than that. But I can honestly say that when I met her, I admired her, I respected her. Now, I didn't get down on my knees and bow to her physically, but I did in my heart. You know, I knew that it was a privilege for me to be with her. And I knew that I was better for being with her. And so to say that love begins with admiration, definitely. You know, and I would say today, in a godly relationship, to find true love, you would find somebody that you admire, to look for someone that would admire you, right? The second thing we see is devotion. We see Abigail's heart. She has a heart for faith. She shares that with David. They both realize that when they come together. You know, David sees the strong devotion she has to God. David recognizes he has that too. You know, I do a lot of weddings in Montgomery, and so the couple will come to my office and we'll do the little chit-chat about, oh, what are your colors? And then I always kind of swing it around through pastoral counseling. I always try to ask them, you know, about your faith. Like, you're going to get married, so how does it work? Like, are you guys both Christians? Are you both Catholic? Are you one a Christian, one of you not a Christian? Are you both not Christians? Like, just what's the deal? And so they kind of explain that to me. And the thing that I'm listening for, the thing that I want to encourage in them, is that they both be the same. You know, whatever it is, you should at least both be the same. Whether you both are or you both not. It's difficult when one is higher than the other. You know, when I was dating, and I might have liked particular people, I may have been attracted to particular people, but the problem for me always was the imbalance in faith. To say that one person was, you know, had a stronger relationship with God and one person had a weaker or none is a difficult thing when it's such an important part of your life. And so I would say that you should try to be balanced. You want to be balanced with your spouse. You want to be balanced with your boyfriend. You want to be balanced with your girlfriend. You want to be at the same level. And if you want to have a desire, or if you desire a love like Abigail's and David's, then you would ask yourself, well, one, do I have a relationship with Jesus Christ? And then secondly, does my boyfriend or does my husband have a relationship with Jesus Christ? Because I don't mean you guys both go to the same church. I don't mean you guys both belong to the same denomination. I mean, like, when you talk and you have conversations, are you balanced? Are you at the same level? But then what if you're not? What if you're not? I get people come in my office and they ask me that question. People are worried and they wonder, you know, is this the end? And so the Apostle Paul actually has our answer for us in 1 Corinthians 7. He says, to the rest I say that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. And if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. So if you have mutual admiration for one another, and if you love one another, then hopefully one of you will have an influence on the other. Hopefully you both influence each other. And so the scriptures are saying, hopefully it's your influence that comes across. Hopefully the other one is made holy because of your influence. And that's what we've been talking about today, right? Being people of influence, being people of faith who can be people of influence. Because remember, Abigail comes to David when he's not balanced with her. He is the weaker person in the story because he's fallen away from his path. It takes Abigail, a person of strong faith, to come in and remind him, hey, you need a Snickers bar because you're not, right? You're not on the same level. That would have been a great commercial to show. It's like, you're just not on this, you're not balanced right now. And so she reminds him of that, and she's able to sway him and bring him back. And so Abigail and David's love, it's built on admiration, it's built on devotion, and it's built on love. Of course it's built on love. What was my third thing going to be? What else could I have said? It has to be love, right? So you read this chapter and you go, well, I don't know. I don't really see love here. Like, do Abigail and David love each other? Well, it's there. I just think you have to look for it. In 1 Samuel 25 and verse 30, she says, and when the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you and has appointed you prince over Israel, she says, okay, in other words, a long time from now, way far in the future, when you're king, right, that's what she says, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause or for my Lord working salvation for himself. She says, look, a long time from now in the future, when you're king, and you look back to this day, she goes, I want you to know that you made the right choice. I don't want you to have guilty feelings. I want you to feel good about what you do today. She cares about his future. She cares about his well-being. And she says, and when the Lord has dealt with you, then you remember me. She is literally fulfilling the words of Jesus right here, to love your neighbor as yourself. She cares about his future. She cares about him becoming king. And she loves him the way you love yourself. The Bible never tells you to love anyone more than you love yourself. You love God first, right? You put him first. And we love each other as we love ourselves. Husbands, wives, we love each other as we love ourselves. It's commanded in Ephesians 5. It says, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as what? As their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. Because you see, God's definition of love is that you nourish, cherish, protect, provide happiness, health, spiritual growth of another person the same way you would provide and nourish and cherish all those things in yourself. That's a lot. That's a lot to cover for one chapter, right? There's a lot going on in one chapter. But what do you learn from Abigail's story? We said Abigail's name means joy, right? Abigail's name means joy. And what do we see her do? She's a peacemaker. She brings peace between David and Nabal. She brings peace between David and God. And then we find this new peace, this new love between her and David. When you are able to turn someone else aside from anger, when you are able to turn somebody else aside from revenge, when you're able to turn somebody else aside from their desire to make war, you become the joy of your Father. Do you want to bring joy to the heart of God this week? Then look, God is showing you what it takes to make peace, whether it be in your group of friends, whether it be your family, your household, your job, your career, your neighborhood, your school, anywhere around the world. If there are people that are coming in hot, people that have had their world turned upside down, people in your sphere of influence whose lives have just took a turn, they're going to be looking for people who can bring peace, people who have godly character and who have influence. Who is determined around you to take revenge? Who doesn't care that they're throwing gasoline on the flame of war? God's called you, God's called me to be a servant, to take all of these spiritual gifts we have and to heap them up on the back of a donkey and send them on ahead of us so that they can know what we know, that we serve a great and awesome God and that we can be there for them in their time of need. Let's pray.